Hello and welcome to the Very Audible Stories. In today's videos, it would be a stories about a hidden kindness coming from a mafia bosses whom everyone feared. If you like these videos, please share your thoughts on the comment sections and subscribe to the channel to receive notifications about new videos. Thank you.
5 years of silence, one shattered arm, a phone number she swore she'd never use. When Lena Parker locked herself in that bathroom with her ex-boyfriend's fist still echoing through the door, she had two choices: die quietly like she'd been taught, or call the most dangerous man in the city and pray he remembered her face. What happened next didn't save her life. It rebuilt it from the ground up. This is the story of the woman who survived by refusing to disappear. If you're watching from somewhere in this world, hit that like button and drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far Lena's story travels tonight. The bathroom floor was cold. Lena Parker pressed her back against the locked door, her right arm cradled against her chest at an angle that made her stomach turn. The bone had snapped clean. She'd heard it, felt it give way under Derek's boot when she'd tried to crawl past him toward the apartment door. Now the limb hung useless and screaming, every heartbeat sending fresh waves of agony through her shoulder and down into her fingertips. Outside, Derek's voice rose and fell in a rhythm she knew too well. Apologizing, pleading, threatening. The cycle always followed the same pattern, like a song she'd memorized against her will. "Baby, please. I didn't mean it. You know I didn't mean it." His weight hit the door. The frame shuddered. "Lena, open the door. We need to talk about this. We need to work through this together." Another impact. Harder this time. "Open the goddamn door!" Lena's left hand trembled as she reached into the pocket of her torn jeans. Her fingers found the small rectangle she'd carried for 8 months, a business card, edges worn soft from being touched and hidden and nearly thrown away 100 times. The paper was warm from her body heat. She pulled it out. Even in the dim bathroom light, she could read the name embossed in simple black letters, Victor Salerno. Below it, a phone number, nothing else. No title, no company, no explanation. Just a name that carried weight in every corner of this city and a number she'd sworn she would never, ever use. The memory surfaced unbidden. A February night, snow falling outside the diner where she worked the graveyard shift. 3 men in expensive coats had taken the corner booth. She'd served them coffee and kept her head down, the way she always did. But when she'd set the check on the table, one of them, the one in the center, the one the others deferred to, had looked up at her, really looked. Not the way men usually looked at Lena, not with hunger or dismissal or the casual cruelty she'd learned to expect. He'd looked at her the way someone might study a painting in a museum, seeing details invisible to everyone else. "You're hurt," he'd said quietly. The bruise on her cheekbone had been 3 days old, fading to yellow-green. She'd covered it with makeup. Nobody ever noticed. "I'm fine," she'd whispered automatically. "No." His voice had been calm, certain. "You're not." He'd left a $100 tip on a $12 check, and beneath the cash he'd placed a business card face down on the table. "When you're ready," he'd said, standing to leave. "Or when you have no other choice. Whichever comes first." Then he'd walked out into the February snow, and Lena had stood there with his card burning a hole in her apron pocket, wondering what kind of man could see through her so easily. That had been 8 months ago. Derek hit the door again. Something in the frame cracked. "I know you're scared, baby. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. We always fix this, right? We always work it out." Lena's vision blurred. Her broken arm throbbed in time with her pulse, each beat a reminder that this time was different. This time, Derek hadn't stopped. This time, when she'd fallen, he'd kept coming, kept kicking, kept breaking. This time, she'd seen something in his eyes that terrified her more than the pain. The realization that he'd crossed a line he couldn't uncross, and the only way forward was to cross it completely. If she opened that door, she wouldn't leave this apartment alive. Her thumb hovered over her phone screen. 5 years. 5 years of making herself smaller, quieter, easier to manage. 5 years of apologies for crimes she didn't commit, of walking on eggshells that always shattered beneath her feet. 5 years of telling herself that it wasn't that bad, that she could handle it, that leaving would only make things worse. 5 years of disappearing piece by piece until she'd almost forgotten what her own voice sounded like. Derek's shoulder slammed into the door. The lock rattled. "Lena, I swear if you don't open this door right now..." She dialed. The phone rang once, twice. "Don't make me break this door down, Lena. You know I don't want to do that. You know I hate when you make me..." "Yes." The voice on the other end of the line was exactly as she remembered it. Quiet, controlled, absolutely certain. A voice that didn't need to be loud to command every room it entered. Lena's breath caught. Her throat closed around the words she'd been preparing. For a moment, she couldn't speak at all. "Who is this?" Victor Salerno asked, his tone unchanged. "Patient." Her voice cracked. She tried again. "You gave me your card 8 months ago, at the diner." Silence. Then, "The February girl." Something about those two words, the fact that he remembered, that he'd labeled that moment in his own memory, broke something open in Lena's chest. "I need help." The words tumbled out in a whisper. "Please, I need..." Derek's fist crashed through the bathroom door panel. Splinters exploded inward. Lena screamed, "Where are you?" Victor's voice cut through the phone like a blade, all patience gone, replaced by something sharp and immediate. 2247 Riverside, Lena gasped. Apartment 3B. He's breaking through the door. My arm is broken. I can't... Lock yourself in the tub. Put the phone down, but don't hang up. I'm 12 minutes away. He'll get through the door before... 11 minutes now. Go. Tub. Now. The command in his voice bypassed Lena's panic, went straight to her muscles. She scrambled backward, cradling her broken arm, and climbed awkwardly into the old clawfoot bathtub. She set the phone on the porcelain edge, Victor's voice still coming through the speaker. "I'm here," he said calmly. "I'm on my way. You're not alone." Derek's arm thrust through the hole in the door, fingers groping for the lock. "Found you," he snarled. Lena pressed herself against the back of the tub, making herself as small as possible. Her broken arm screamed. Her heart hammered so hard she thought her ribs might crack. Derek's hand found the lock, turned it. The door swung open. He stood in the doorway, chest heaving, knuckles bleeding from punching through the wood. His eyes were wild. Not with rage exactly, but with something worse. Righteousness. The absolute certainty that he was the injured party here, that Lena had forced him to this, that everything that happened next would be her fault. "Why do you always make me do this?" he asked, stepping into the small bathroom. "Why can't you just be good?" From the phone's speaker, Victor's voice remained steady. 9 minutes. Derek's eyes snapped to the phone. His face twisted. "Who the hell is that? Who the hell are you talking to?" He lunged for the phone. Lena grabbed it first, clutching it to her chest with her good hand. Derek's fingers closed around her wrist, squeezing until she felt bones grind together. "Give me the phone." "No." The word came out stronger than Lena expected. "No." Derek's other hand rose. Lena flinched, bracing for the impact. "Touch her again," Victor's voice said quietly from the phone's speaker, "and you won't have hands anymore." Derek froze. Something in that voice, the absolute lack of bluff, the promise delivered like a weather report, made him hesitate. "Who the fuck do you think you are?" Derek demanded, his grip on Lena's wrist loosening slightly. 7 minutes, Victor replied. "This is my girlfriend. My apartment. You got no right." 6 minutes, 30 seconds. "I suggest you start running." Derek's face flushed purple. "You threatening me? You don't even know who I am. You don't know what I'm capable of." Derek Thomas Morrison, age 32, works at Morrison Auto Parts, the business your father built before the cancer took him. You've been managing it into the ground for 3 years. You drink bourbon, you bet on sports you don't understand, and you hurt women because it's the only thing that makes you feel powerful. Victor's voice never rose, never changed tone. "You have 6 minutes. Use them wisely." The color drained from Derek's face. Who are you?" "Someone who doesn't ask twice." 5 minutes, 40 seconds. Derek's hand fell away from Lena's wrist. He backed toward the bathroom door, his bravado cracking like thin ice. "This is insane. You can't just..." 5 minutes, 20 seconds. Derek turned and ran. Lena heard him crashing through the apartment, heard the front door slam open, heard his footsteps echoing down the stairwell, growing fainter. Then, silence. Lena sat in the bathtub, cradling her broken arm, phone pressed to her ear, listening to her own ragged breathing. "He's gone," she whispered. "He'll come back," Victor said. "In about 2 hours, once the fear wears off and the bourbon kicks in, he'll convince himself I was bluffing. He'll come back meaner." "What do I—" "You do nothing. I'm 4 minutes away. Stay in the tub. Stay on the line." Lena closed her eyes. Tears leaked down her cheeks, hot and sudden. "I don't understand. Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." "I know enough." "What does that mean?" For a moment, Victor didn't answer. Then, "I know what it looks like when someone's been taught that they don't matter. I know how much courage it takes to make one phone call when you've spent years learning to stay silent. And I know that nobody should have to live the way you've been living. I didn't think you'd remember me. I remember everyone I give my card to." A pause. "There aren't many. Why me?" "Because when I looked at you, I saw someone who hadn't given up. Not completely. Not yet." Fresh tears came. Lena pressed her good hand over her mouth, trying to muffle the sobs that wanted to break free. 3 minutes, Victor said gently. "Then I'm going to take care of this. All of it. You understand?" Lena nodded, then realized he couldn't see her. "Yes." "Say it out loud. I need to hear you say it." "Yes." Her voice was stronger this time. "I understand." "Good girl." The words weren't patronizing. They weren't possessive. They were simply acknowledgement, recognition of her bravery in making that call, in choosing survival. Lena sat in the bathtub and listened to Victor's steady breathing through the phone and felt something she hadn't experienced in 5 years. Hope. True to his word, Victor arrived in 3 minutes and 40 seconds. Lena heard the apartment door open. No knock, no announcement, just the quiet click of someone who knew how to move through locked spaces without leaving evidence. Footsteps approached the bathroom. Measured. Calm. "Lena?" Victor's voice came from just beyond the doorway. "I'm coming in. Don't be frightened." He stepped into view, and Lena's breath caught. She'd remembered him as tall, but memory had undersold the reality. Victor Salerno stood well over 6 feet, built like someone who'd earned his strength through use rather than vanity. His dark hair was shot through with silver at the temples. His face was all sharp angles and old scars, the kind earned in alleys rather than boardrooms. He wore a black coat over a dark suit, expensive but understated, but it was his eyes that stopped her. Gray, almost colorless in the bathroom's harsh light, and completely focused on her with that same intense attention he'd shown in the diner months ago, like she was the only person in the world who mattered. He knelt beside the tub without hesitation, his movements careful and deliberate. "Let me see your arm." Lena extended it slowly, wincing as the movement sent fresh pain radiating through her shoulder. Victor's hands, large, scarred across the knuckles, touched her with surprising gentleness. His fingers probed the injury with practiced precision, and Lena realized he'd done this before. Many times. "Clean break? Radius and ulna both. You need a hospital." "No." The word came out automatically. "I can't afford—" "Yes, you can. I'm paying. Non-negotiable." He met her eyes. "Can you stand?" "I think so." Victor stood and extended his hand. Lena took it with her good hand, and he pulled her up slowly, supporting her weight until she found her balance. Standing, she barely reached his shoulder. She'd forgotten how small she felt next to him, but it didn't feel threatening. It felt sheltering. "Anyone else in this apartment?" Victor asked. "Just me and Derek. He ran when you— Good." He made a smart choice for once. Victor guided her carefully out of the bathroom, one hand steady on her lower back. "We're going to walk out to my car. If you feel dizzy, tell me immediately." "Okay." They moved through the apartment slowly. Lena saw it with new eyes now. The holes in the walls where Derek's fists had landed during previous fights. The broken picture frames. The spot on the kitchen floor where she'd scrubbed up her own blood 6 weeks ago after he'd shoved her into the counter. 5 years. 5 years she'd lived here. It had never been a home. "Do you need to take anything with you?" Victor asked. Lena looked around. Her clothes were Derek's choices. Modest, forgettable, designed to help her disappear. Her phone was a prepaid model he checked obsessively. The few belongings she'd brought into this relationship had been destroyed or thrown away years ago. "No," she said quietly. "There's nothing here that's mine." Something flickered in Victor's eyes. Anger, maybe, or recognition. He nodded once. "Then let's go." The night air hit Lena's face like cold water. She inhaled deeply, tasting freedom for the first time in 5 years. Victor's car, a black sedan, expensive but not flashy, waited at the curb, engine running. A second man stood beside it, younger than Victor, with sharp eyes and a professional stillness. "Marco," Victor said quietly. "Meet Lena. She'll be with us for a while." Marco nodded respectfully. "Ma'am." He opened the back door. Victor helped Lena into the car with the same careful attention, making sure her broken arm was supported before he closed the door. Then he slid into the seat beside her while Marco took the driver's position. "St. Catherine's Hospital," Victor instructed. "Emergency entrance. Call ahead. Tell them we're bringing in a patient with significant injuries. I want Dr. Reeves, if she's available." "Already done, boss." Marco pulled smoothly away from the curb. Lena watched her apartment building recede through the rear window. 5 years of her life, disappearing into the darkness. "What about Derek?" she heard herself ask. "When he comes back and finds me gone." "He won't come back," Victor said calmly. "You don't know him. He'll—" "Lena." Victor turned to face her fully. "Look at me." She did. "Derek Morrison will not touch you again. He will not call you. He will not come near you. He will not speak your name to another living soul. Do you understand?" "How can you promise that?" "Because by the time the sun rises, Derek Morrison is going to understand exactly how much danger he's in, and he's going to make the very smart choice to disappear from your life completely." Victor's voice remained conversational, even gentle. "You made a phone call tonight. That call changed everything, not just for you, for him too." Well, Lena wanted to argue, to explain that Victor didn't understand how obsessive Derek could be, how he'd never just let her go. But something in Victor's eyes stopped her. This was a man who'd made promises before and kept them. This was a man who understood danger in ways Lena couldn't imagine. This was a man who'd dropped everything and driven across the city at midnight because a waitress he'd met once had finally made a phone call. "Why?" Lena whispered. "Why would you do all this for me?" Victor was quiet for a moment, his gaze drifting to the window, watching the city lights blur past. When he spoke, his voice carried something that might have been old pain, carefully locked away. 6 years ago, I had a sister, Elena. She was 23, smart, funny, full of life. She got involved with a man who seemed charming at first. By the time we realized what he was doing to her, she'd learned to hide it too well. We tried to help. She kept saying she was fine, that she could handle it, that leaving would only make it worse. He paused. We found her on a Tuesday morning. She'd called me the night before, but I was handling business. I told her I'd call back in an hour. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I was 45 minutes too late. Lena's breath stopped. "I'm not telling you this for sympathy," Victor continued. "I'm telling you so you understand. When I look at you, I see the phone call my sister never made, the choice she didn't take, the courage she couldn't find. You made that call tonight. You chose survival, and I will burn this entire city down before I let your story end the way hers did." Tears spilled down Lena's cheeks. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry about your sister." "Don't be sorry. Be alive." Victor met her eyes again. "That's all I ask. Stay alive. Let me handle the rest." The car pulled up to the hospital emergency entrance. Lights blazed against the darkness. Medical staff already waited at the doors. Victor's call ahead had ensured immediate attention. As Marco opened the door and Victor helped her out of the car, Lena felt the weight of 5 years beginning to lift. Not gone, not yet, but lighter, bearable. "Mr. Salerno." A woman in scrubs approached, confident and efficient. "I'm Dr. Reeves. Let's get your friend taken care of." Friend. The word was a courtesy, a fiction. But as Victor walked beside Lena into the bright hospital lights, his hand steady on her back, she thought maybe someday it could be true. Maybe someday she'd be more than a ghost of his sister. Maybe someday she'd be Lena again. The emergency room blurred into a series of moments: x-rays, pain medication, gentle hands setting her broken bones. Dr. Reeves worked with calm efficiency, asking questions that Lena answered automatically, while Victor stood just outside the exam room, visible through the glass, a silent sentinel. "This is a fresh break," Dr. Reeves said quietly, not quite meeting Lena's eyes. "Very fresh. Do you want to tell me what happened?" Lena's rehearsed lies rose automatically to her lips. "I fell. I tripped on the stairs. I'm so clumsy." But then she saw Victor through the glass, saw the way he stood with absolute patience, waiting for however long this took. Remembered his sister, remembered the phone call that came too late. "My boyfriend did it," Lena said. Her voice didn't shake. "He's done it before. Tonight was different. Tonight I called for help." Dr. Reeves' eyes softened. "Good. That's good." She glanced toward Victor. "Is he your help?" "Yes." "Is he safe?" The question caught Lena off guard. She followed Dr. Reeves's gaze to where Victor stood, this man who commanded rooms with his presence, whose very name made Derek run. A man she barely knew. A man who'd promised to protect her. "Yes," Lena said, and realized she meant it. "He's safe." Dr. Reeves nodded slowly. "Okay, but you should know you have options. I can connect you with social workers, shelters, legal advocates. You don't have to rely on anyone else if you don't want to." "I know." And Lena did know, appreciated the reminder that she still had choices. "But this is the choice I'm making." "All right then." Dr. Reeves finished wrapping the cast around Lena's arm, deep blue, surprisingly vibrant against her pale skin. "You're going to need to come back in 6 weeks for follow-up x-rays. The bones will heal, but you'll need physical therapy to get full range of motion back." "I'll make sure she gets there," Victor said from the doorway. Lena hadn't heard him approach, but Dr. Reeves didn't look surprised by his sudden presence. "Mr. Salerno." Dr. Reeves's tone was professional but warm. "Always a pleasure." "Dr. Reeves." Victor inclined his head slightly. "Thank you for the excellent care, as always." As always. The word suggested this wasn't the first time Victor had brought someone to this particular doctor. Lena wondered how many other calls he'd answered, how many other people he'd pulled from the darkness. As they left the hospital, dawn was beginning to break over the city. Pale light touched the buildings, turning glass and steel into something almost beautiful. Lena stood on the sidewalk, breathing in the morning air, her casted arm heavy but not painful anymore thanks to the medication. "Where would you like to go?" Victor asked. The question seemed absurd. I don't know. I don't have anywhere." "Yes, you do." Victor gestured to the waiting car. "I own a building downtown. Secure. Private. There's a furnished apartment on the 8th floor that's currently vacant. It's yours for as long as you need it." "I can't afford—" "I'm not asking you to pay. I'm offering you a safe place to recover." Victor's tone brooked no argument. "You can accept the help, Lena. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't mean you owe me anything. It just means you're smart enough to take the hand that's being offered." Lena looked at this man who'd appeared in her life twice now, once to see her when she was invisible, once to save her when she was dying. A dangerous man, a powerful man, a man who could probably snap her in half without effort, but also a man who'd lost his sister and spent 6 years trying to rewrite that ending with every broken woman who found his card. "Okay," Lena said. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. We still have work to do." "What kind of work?" Victor opened the car door for her. The kind that makes sure Derek Morrison never hurts anyone again. The apartment was beautiful. Lena stood in the center of the living room, turning slowly to take it all in. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Modern furniture in soft grays and blues. A kitchen with gleaming appliances. A bedroom with an actual door that locked from the inside. "The building has 24-hour security," Victor explained, standing near the entrance while Marco set down the bags they'd stopped to purchase. Clothes, toiletries, basic necessities. "Cameras in all common areas. You have a panic button by the bed and another in the bathroom. Press either one, and my people will be here in under 3 minutes." "Your people?" Lena repeated. "Who are your people exactly?" Victor smiled slightly. "Men and women who work for me, who understand that certain lines should never be crossed, and that people who cross them need to be reminded of their mortality. You're talking about, Lena paused. What exactly do you do, Victor? I solve problems, some legally, some less so. He met her eyes directly. I won't lie to you about what I am, Lena. I'm not a good man. I've done things that would horrify you, but I have rules, lines I don't cross, and hurting the innocent is the brightest line of all. Is that why you help people like me? People like you aren't a category. You're individuals. Each person I help is a choice I make. A small piece of redemption I can't earn, but keep trying for anyway. Victor moved toward the door. Get some rest. Real rest. Marco will be downstairs if you need anything. I'll come by tomorrow evening to discuss next steps. Wait. Lena crossed the room, stopping a few feet from him. What happens to Derek? Really? Victor's expression didn't change. What would you like to happen to him? The question hung in the air between them. Lena thought about 5 years of fear, 5 years of carefully managed violence, 5 years of becoming smaller and quieter until she was practically invisible. She thought about the look in Derek's eyes tonight when he'd kicked her broken arm, the certainty that he could do anything he wanted to her because she was his. I want him to be afraid, Lena heard herself say. The way he made me afraid. I want him to understand what it feels like to be powerless. Done. I want him to leave this city and never come back. Easily arranged. And I want, Lena's voice cracked, I want to make sure he can't do this to anyone else. Ever. Victor studied her for a long moment. That's harder, but not impossible. How? Leave that to me. My methods aren't pretty, and you don't need that weight on your conscience. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently touched her shoulder. You focus on healing, on remembering who you were before he taught you to be afraid. Let me handle the monster. Lena nodded, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried her through the night was fading, leaving her hollow and shaking. Get some sleep, Victor said softly. When you wake up, things will already be better. I promise. He left, closing the door quietly behind him. Lena stood alone in her beautiful new apartment, listening to the silence. No footsteps, no angry breathing, no drunken threats. Just silence, just space, just possibility. She walked to the bedroom, locked the door from the inside even though she knew she was safe, and collapsed onto the bed. Sleep claimed her instantly, deep and dreamless. When she woke 16 hours later, the afternoon sun was streaming through the windows, and her phone, the new phone Marco had included in the supplies, showed 3 missed calls from an unknown number and 1 text message from Victor. Derek Morrison left the city 2 hours ago. His auto parts business is being sold to cover his debts. He won't be back. You're free. V. Lena read the message 3 times. Waiting for the fear to come. Waiting for the certainty that this was temporary, that Derek would return, that freedom was a lie she'd foolishly believed. But the fear didn't come. Instead, something else rose in her chest. Something she'd forgotten how to feel. Relief. She was free, and for the first time in 5 years, Lena Parker allowed herself to cry. Not from pain or fear, but from the overwhelming, terrifying, beautiful reality that she had survived. She had made the call. She had chosen to live. And now she had to figure out who she was when she wasn't afraid anymore. The journey was just beginning. 3 days passed in a strange, suspended quiet. Lena spent the first day simply existing in the apartment, testing the boundaries of her new freedom, like someone learning to walk after years in chains. She woke when her body wanted to wake, not when an alarm or angry voice demanded it. She ate when she was hungry. Marco had the kitchen stocked with real food, not the budget staples Derek had rationed. She stood at the windows and watched the city move below her, all those lives intersecting and separating, and felt herself becoming solid again. Real. The second day, she ventured out onto the building's rooftop garden. The November air was crisp, carrying the smell of coming winter. Other residents nodded politely as they passed, respecting her space. Nobody asked questions. Nobody stared at her cast or the fading bruises on her face. In Victor's building, discretion seemed to be an unspoken rule. By the third day, Lena found herself thinking about the future for the first time in years. Not just surviving the next hour, the next argument, the next explosion of violence. Actually thinking about what came next. who she wanted to be, what she wanted to do. The thoughts terrified her almost as much as Derek had. That evening, Victor arrived exactly when he'd said he would, 7 o'clock, carrying takeout containers that smelled like actual Italian food, not the chain restaurant approximations Lena had lived on. "May I come in?" he asked from the doorway, as if this weren't his building, his apartment, his entire world that he'd temporarily loaned to her. "Of course." Lena stepped back, suddenly self-conscious. She'd showered, dressed in the simple clothes Marco had bought, jeans that actually fit, a soft sweater in deep green. Her hair was clean and loose around her shoulders instead of pulled back in the severe ponytail Derek had preferred. She looked more like herself than she had in years, and that felt both liberating and vulnerable. Victor noticed. His eyes tracked the changes with that same careful attention, but he said nothing, just set the food on the kitchen counter and began unpacking containers. "I wasn't sure what you liked, so I brought options. Chicken marsala, eggplant parmesan, fettuccine alfredo. All from Giordano's. They're the real thing, not the tourist trap version." "You didn't have to do this." "I know." Victor pulled out plates, moved around the kitchen with the ease of someone who knew exactly where everything was because he'd furnished it himself. "But I wanted to. Sit, eat, then we'll talk." They ate in surprisingly comfortable silence. Lena hadn't realized how hungry she was until the first bite hit her tongue. Real food, prepared with care, seasoned properly. She'd forgotten food could taste like this. Could be something more than fuel to be consumed quickly before Derek decided she'd taken too long at the table. Victor ate methodically, but she noticed he watched her with peripheral awareness, making sure she was actually eating, making sure she was okay. "It's good," Lena said finally. "Really good. Giordano's has been family-run for 40 years. They know what they're doing." Victor set down his fork. "How are you feeling? Physically, I mean? The arm?" "Better. The pain medication helps." Lena flexed her fingers, testing the cast's limits. "Dr. Reeves said it should heal cleanly if I'm careful." "You'll be careful." It wasn't a question. Lena found herself smiling slightly. "Yes, I will." "Good." Victor leaned back in his chair. "Now, we need to discuss Derek." The name still sent ice through Lena's veins, but it was a thinner ice now, cracking at the edges. "Your text said he left the city." "He did. 48 hours ago, Derek Morrison sold his father's auto parts business to a competitor for 30 cents on the dollar. He withdrew the remaining cash from his accounts, packed a single bag, and drove west. Last confirmed sighting was in Ohio, still heading away from here." Lena stared at him. "How did you make that happen? In 2 days?" Victor's expression remained neutral. Derek Morrison was easy to motivate. Men like him are always easy. They're bullies, and bullies are fundamentally cowards. You just have to speak their language. "What language is that?" "Fear." Victor stood, walked to the window, looked out at the city. "The morning after I took you to the hospital, Derek went back to your apartment, found it empty, found you gone. He called your phone, the old one, 67 times, left messages ranging from apologetic to threatening to pathetic. All very predictable." "How do you know?" "I had someone watching the apartment and someone monitoring his calls." Victor turned back to face her. "That afternoon, Derek went to work. Told his employees you'd left him, that you'd stolen money from him, that if anyone saw you, they should call the police. Classic abuser playbook, trying to poison your reputation before you could tell your side." Lena's hands clenched. "Did anyone believe him?" "Doesn't matter, because that evening, Derek had a visitor at the shop." "You?" "No, I sent Marco. Marco is very good at making certain points clear without raising his voice." Victor moved back to the table, sat down. "Marco explained to Derek that his behavior toward you had been noticed, that certain people were very interested in ensuring you remained safe, that Derek's options had narrowed considerably." "What options?" "Option 1, Derek could leave town immediately, sell his business, and never contact you or speak your name again. In exchange, he'd get to keep his kneecaps and his freedom." Lena's breath caught. "And option 2? Option 2 involved a much longer conversation, several friends of mine with specific skill sets, and a shallow grave in the Pine Barrens." Victor's voice remained conversational. "Marco made it clear which option I preferred, but emphasized that the choice, was entirely Derek's. That's... Lena didn't know what it was. Terrifying, excessive, exactly what Derek deserved. That's a death threat. No, it's a promise of consequences for actions already taken. There's a difference. Victor met her eyes. Men like Derek Morrison have operated their entire lives without meaningful consequences. Someone backs down. Someone forgives. Someone convinces the victim she's overreacting. The abuse continues because the cost-benefit analysis always favors the abuser. I simply adjusted the math. By threatening to kill him. By making him understand that you are protected. That touching you again would be the last autonomous choice he ever made. That understanding motivated Derek to make better decisions than he's made in years. Lena processed this slowly. Part of her, the part that had been broken and rebuilt wrong over 5 years, wanted to be horrified. Wanted to insist that violence wasn't the answer, that there were proper channels, that Victor had crossed a line. But a larger part, a part that remembered every bruise and broken promise, every time Derek had hurt her and faced zero consequences, felt something else entirely. Satisfaction. Did Marco hurt him? She asked quietly. Marco adjusted Derek's perspective without laying a hand on him. Derek left the meeting with his body intact and his pride in pieces, exactly as intended. Victor paused. Derek made his choice within 6 hours. Smart man, when properly motivated. And his business? I bought it through a shell company, sold it to a competitor who will actually run it properly. The employees will keep their jobs. Derek walked away with enough money to start over somewhere else, provided he stays far away from here. Victor's expression hardened slightly. He also signed several documents that will make his life very difficult if he ever raises his hand to another woman. Legal agreements with teeth. My attorneys are creative that way. Lena felt tears pricking her eyes, but they weren't sad tears. They were something else. Relief. Vindication. The overwhelming realization that someone had actually done something, had made Derek face consequences, had believed her enough to act. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me for the bare minimum. You deserved this 5 years ago. You deserved someone to step in and stop him the first time he hurt you. Victor's voice carried an edge of controlled anger, not at her, she realized, but at a world that had failed her so completely. What I did was simply correct an ongoing injustice. It's more than anyone else has ever done. Then everyone else failed you. The blunt honesty of it landed like a blow. Lena had spent so long making excuses. For Derek, for herself, for all the people who'd seen the signs and looked away. Hearing someone state plainly that she'd been failed, that her suffering wasn't her fault, cracked something open in her chest. I need you to understand something, Victor continued. Derek Morrison is gone. He will not return. He will not contact you. He will not hurt you or anyone else if I have any say in the matter. This part of your life is over. Just like that? Just like that. Lena laughed, a broken sound caught between a sob and genuine amusement. It feels too easy, too fast. 5 years of hell and it ends with one phone call in 3 days? It wasn't easy, and it wasn't fast. You spent 5 years surviving, fighting, refusing to disappear completely even when he tried to erase you. That was the hard part. This? Victor gestured vaguely. This was just cleanup, administrative work. Administrative work, Lena repeated. You threatened a man's life and dismantled his entire existence in 48 hours, and you're calling it administrative work. I've done much worse for much less noble reasons. Victor's tone was matter of fact. Helping you barely registers on my conscience. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, the city lights were coming on, transforming the skyline into something almost magical. Lena watched the sunset paint the buildings gold and orange and thought about new beginnings. Second chances. The terrifying blank page of a future she could write herself. What happens now? She asked finally. Now you heal. You figure out who you are when you're not in survival mode. You make choices based on what you want instead of what keeps you safest. Victor stood, began clearing the plates. And you let me know if you need anything. Anything at all. I need a job. The words came out before Lena had fully formed the thought. I can't just live here for free, doing nothing. You can do exactly that until you're ready to do something else. I'm ready now. Victor paused, studying her with those sharp gray eyes. Your arm is broken. You're still recovering from significant trauma. There's no rush. There is, though. Elena stood, met his gaze. Every day I sit here doing nothing, I feel like I'm waiting for permission to live my own life. I'm done waiting. I'm done asking permission. I want to work. I want to be useful. I want to prove to myself that I can. Something that might have been respect flickered across Victor's face. What kind of work? I don't know. I've been a waitress for 8 years. I'm good with people, good at managing chaos, good at keeping calm under pressure. She laughed bitterly. Derek made sure I got plenty of practice with that last one. You have other skills? Intelligence, resilience, the ability to read people and situations. Victor crossed his arms, considering. I might have something if you're interested. What kind of something? I own several legitimate businesses in addition to my less legitimate enterprises. Restaurants, clubs, a security consulting firm. The restaurant group is always looking for experienced managers. The pay is fair, the work is real, and nobody will ask questions about your past. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you an option. You can take it or not. You can start tomorrow or in 6 months. Your choice entirely. Lena wanted to say yes immediately, wanted to grab onto this lifeline with both hands, but something made her hesitate. If I work for you, what does that make me? What do I owe you? Nothing. Victor's answer was immediate and firm. You owe me nothing. Not gratitude, not loyalty, not anything beyond what any employee owes their employer. Honest work for fair pay. This isn't a debt. It's not a trap. It's just a job, Lena. Nothing more, nothing less. And if I say no, then you say no. You stay in this apartment rent-free until you find something else. We remain, whatever this is, allies, friends, maybe, eventually. The offer stands regardless. Lena searched his face for deception, for the hidden angle, for the trap she'd learned to expect from men who offered help. But Victor's expression remained open, patient, waiting for her choice without pressuring it. Okay, she said. Yes, I want the job. You're sure? No, but I'm choosing it anyway. Victor smiled, a real smile that transformed his severe features into something almost warm. Good. That's how the best choices are made. I'll set up a meeting with Maria. She runs the restaurant group. You'll like her. She doesn't tolerate any bullshit. When? Tomorrow if you want. Or next week. Your timeline. Tomorrow. Lena felt a surge of determination, the first she'd experienced in years. I want to start rebuilding immediately. No more waiting. Tomorrow it is. Victor pulled out his phone, typed a quick message. Done. Maria will meet you at Lucia's, that's the flagship location, at 10 a.m. Wear something comfortable. She'll want to see how you move through the space. The casual efficiency of it, the way Victor could simply text someone and rearrange her entire future, should have been frightening. Instead, Lena found it oddly comforting. After 5 years of fighting for every scrap of autonomy, it was strange but not unpleasant to let someone competent simply handle things. Thank you, she said again. Stop thanking me. You're going to earn your place. Maria's tough. She won't give you any special treatment just because I sent you. Victor headed toward the door, then paused. One more thing. You should consider therapy. Lena stiffened. I'm fine. No, you're not. And that's okay. Nobody expects you to be fine after what you've been through. His voice was gentle but unyielding. I'm not suggesting therapy because you're broken. I'm suggesting it because healing from trauma requires professional help. I'll cover the cost. I know someone excellent, Dr. Sarah Chen. She specializes in recovery from intimate partner violence. I don't need Lena. Victor turned back to face her fully. I'm going to tell you something that took me years to learn. Survival and healing are two different things. You've survived. That's an incredible achievement, and you should be proud. But healing requires different tools, different skills. You can't white-knuckle your way through trauma recovery the way you white-knuckled your way through Derek's abuse. The comparison landed hard. Lena wanted to argue, wanted to insist she was fine, that she'd already done the hard part by leaving. But Victor's eyes held understanding born from experience. This wasn't judgment. It was recognition. Did you go to therapy? She asked. After your sister? Yes, for 3 years. I still go monthly. Victor's admission was matter of fact, carrying no shame. It didn't fix everything. Some things can't be fixed. But it helped me separate grief from guilt. Helped me understand that I can't save everyone and that trying to is just another form of control. Is that what you're doing with me? Trying to save me? No, I'm giving you tools and space to save yourself. There's a difference. He pulled a business card from his pocket. Not his own this time, but someone else's. Dr. Sarah Chen, licensed clinical psychologist. Think about it. No pressure. But if you decide you want help processing all of this, Dr. Chen is brilliant. She saw me through the worst of it. Lena took the card, ran her thumb over the embossed letters. Okay, I'll think about it. That's all I ask. Victor opened the door. Get some rest. Tomorrow's a big day. After he left, Lena stood in the quiet apartment holding 2 business cards, Victor's original card, worn soft from 8 months in her pocket, and Dr. Chen's crisp new one. 2 different kinds of help. 2 different paths forward. She thought about Victor's sister, Elena, 23 years old, full of life, making a phone call 45 minutes too late. She thought about all the women who didn't get the chance to rebuild, who stayed silent too long, who disappeared piece by piece until nothing was left. She thought about the woman she'd been 5 years ago, before Derek. Confident, funny, unafraid to take up space. She could barely remember that version of herself now. But maybe, with help, she could find her again. Lena set both cards on the kitchen counter where she'd see them every morning. Reminders, promises, proof that choosing to live meant choosing to do the work of healing. Tomorrow, she'd start over. Tomorrow, she'd meet Maria and prove she could still do this, could still be competent and useful and strong. Tomorrow, she'd take the first steps toward becoming someone she could be proud of. Tonight, she just needed to rest. The meeting with Maria Castellano was nothing like Lena expected. She'd anticipated someone older, severe, intimidating, the type of woman who'd clawed her way up in a man's world and had the battle scars to prove it. Instead, Maria was barely 30, with warm brown eyes, natural curls pulled back in a practical bun, and an easy smile that reached her eyes. Lena Parker, Maria extended her hand. Victor told me you'd be coming. Welcome to Lucia's. The restaurant was beautiful even in the harsh morning light, before the carefully calibrated evening ambiance transformed it into something romantic. High ceilings, exposed brick, an open kitchen where chefs were already prepping for lunch service. The smell of fresh bread and garlic and tomatoes made Lena's stomach rumble. Thank you for meeting with me, Lena said, shaking Maria's hand. The woman's grip was firm, professional. Victor doesn't send people my way often. When he does, I pay attention. Maria gestured toward the dining room. Let's walk and talk. I want to show you the operation. They moved through the restaurant while Maria explained the business. 3 locations now, all doing well, plans for a 4th next year. She talked about her philosophy, good food, fair wages, treating staff like family. She pointed out the flow of the space, the careful choreography that turned chaos into efficiency during rush hours. Victor mentioned you have restaurant experience, Maria said as they reached the kitchen. 8 years as a waitress. I've done everything from diners to upscale casual. I'm good with difficult customers, good at managing multiple tables, good at staying calm when things go wrong. What about management experience? Lena hesitated. None officially, but I've trained new staff, covered for managers who called out, handled scheduling conflicts. I just never had the title. Why not? The honest answer involved Derek, involved being held back deliberately, involved having every achievement minimized or sabotaged. Lena chose a simpler truth. The places I worked didn't invest in promoting from within. I was good enough to handle extra responsibilities, but not good enough to be compensated for them. Maria's expression suggested she'd heard this story before. That won't happen here. You do the work, you get the recognition, and the pay that comes with it. She pulled out her phone, checked something. Victor said you're recovering from an injury. How's your mobility? Lena flexed her casted arm. My right arm's broken, but I'm left-handed. I can't carry heavy trays yet, but I can move, write, use a tablet. I'm cleared for light duty as long as I'm careful. Good. Here's what I'm thinking. Maria leaned against a stainless steel counter. I need an assistant manager for this location. Someone who can handle front-of-house operations, manage reservations, deal with customer issues, supervise waitstaff. The physical demands are moderate. Lots of walking, some standing, but not heavy lifting. Interested? Lena's heart raced. Assistant manager? I don't have that kind of experience. But you have the skills. And more importantly, you have the instincts. Maria smiled. I've been watching you since you walked in. You noticed the uneven table by the window, the burnt-out bulb in the sconce, the fact that one of the menus in the holder had a stain. You're already reading the space, seeing what needs fixing. That's the kind of awareness I need. I'm observant. It's exactly what management is. Seeing problems before they become disasters. Noticing details other people miss. Staying 3 steps ahead of the chaos. Maria crossed her arms. I can teach you systems, teach you scheduling software, teach you how to read a P&L statement. I can't teach someone to give a damn about quality. You already do. Lena felt tears threatening again. When had she become someone who cried at kindness? What if I mess up? Then you'll mess up, we all do. The question is whether you learn from it. Maria's tone was matter-of-fact, not dismissive. Look, I'm not hiring you as a favor to Victor. I'm hiring you because I think you'll be good at this. If you prove me wrong, we'll have a conversation. But I don't think I'm wrong. When would I start? Tomorrow, if you want. We'll do a week of training, shadowing me and the current assistant manager. You'll learn our systems, our standards, our culture. Then you'll start taking on responsibilities gradually. Sound fair? More than fair. Lena extended her good hand. Thank you. I won't let you down. Don't thank me yet. This job isn't easy. The hours are long, the customers can be nightmares, and you'll spend half your time solving problems that shouldn't exist. Maria shook her hand firmly. But it's real work. It's honest work. And if you're good at it, there's room to grow. I started as a waitress 5 years ago. Now I run this whole operation. That kind of trajectory is possible here. They talked for another hour. Logistics, scheduling, pay that made Lena's head spin because it was triple what she'd been making at the diner. Maria gave her a tour of the other 2 locations, introduced her to key staff, explained the culture she'd built. By the time Lena left, her head was spinning with information and possibility. She had a job. A real job with real responsibility and real opportunity. Not because someone was doing her a favor, but because someone saw her potential and decided to invest in it. The difference was everything. Titsen was set. No drama, no pressure, just a was set. No drama, no pressure, just a simple transaction that might change everything. After hanging up, Lena sat on the couch in her safe apartment, looking out at the city lights, thinking about the week she'd just lived. 7 days ago, she'd been trapped in a bathroom with a broken arm, calling a number she'd carried like a talisman for 8 months. Now she was free, employed, and taking active steps toward healing. It felt impossible. It felt miraculous. It felt like something that happened to other people, people who deserved rescue. But it had happened to her. Her phone buzzed, a text from Victor. Maria says you impressed her. I'm not surprised. Proud of you. Lena stared at those 3 words. Proud of you. When was the last time someone had said that? When was the last time she'd done anything worth being proud of? She typed back, Thank you for everything. I start tomorrow. His response came quickly. You earned it yourself. I just opened a door. You walked through it. Lena set down her phone and allowed herself to feel it. Really feel it. Not just relief or gratitude, but something fiercer. Pride, determination. The bone-deep certainty that she was going to survive this, was going to rebuild herself into someone stronger and better than before. Derek was gone. The fear was fading. The future was unwritten. And for the first time in 5 years, Lena Parker was the one holding the pen. The first month passed in a blur of new routines and small victories. Lena threw herself into work at Lucia's with an intensity that surprised even Maria. She arrived early, stayed late, absorbed information like someone making up for lost time. The restaurant's rhythms became her own. The lunch rush chaos, the quiet mid-afternoon lull, the elegant dance of dinner service. She learned to read reservation patterns, to spot a difficult customer 3 sentences into a phone call, to manage staff conflicts before they escalated into problems. "You're a natural at this," Maria told her 2 weeks in, watching Lena smoothly handle a situation where the kitchen had overcooked a VIP's steak. "I've seen managers with 5 years' experience who can't diffuse tension the way you just did." Lena had smiled, but the compliment had landed strangely. Of course she was good at managing conflict and reading dangerous moods, and knowing exactly what to say to keep situations from exploding. She'd spent 5 years earning a doctorate in survival. These skills weren't natural. They were hard-won through pain and fear and desperate necessity. But she was learning to use them differently now, not to protect herself from violence, but to create smooth experiences for strangers. Not to anticipate Derek's moods, but to anticipate customer needs. The same skills, redirected towards something constructive instead of merely surviving. Her therapy sessions with Dr. Chen followed a similar pattern of repurposing pain into growth. Every Thursday at 4 o'clock, Lena sat in the calm, plant-filled office and slowly unpacked 5 years of trauma. Dr. Chen never pushed, never judged, simply created space for Lena to process at her own pace. "You're doing remarkably well," Dr. Chen said during their 4th session. "The progress you've made in a month would take some people 6 months or more." "I had good help," Lena replied, thinking of Victor and Maria and Marco and this entire network of people who'd appeared in her life like guardrails on a dangerous road. "Help is important, but you're the one doing the actual work. Nobody can heal for you. They can only support you while you heal yourself." It was something Victor had said too, in different words. The consistency of the message was starting to sink in. She wasn't being rescued. She was being given tools to rescue herself. Victor himself remained a steady, somewhat mysterious presence. He checked in regularly but never intrusively, a text every few days asking how she was doing, occasional dinners where they talked about work and the city and everything except the violence that had brought them together. He never asked for anything, never implied she owed him, never crossed the professional distance he'd established. Lena found herself both grateful for his restraint and curious about the man beneath the controlled surface. Who was Victor Salerno when he wasn't solving other people's problems? What did he do when he wasn't dismantling abusers and running criminal enterprises? Did he have friends, hobbies, people he loved? She'd asked Maria once, carefully casual while they were closing the restaurant. "Victor, he's complicated." Maria had wiped down the bar with practiced efficiency. "Known him 6 years now. He gave me the loan to open this place when no bank would touch me. Single woman, no collateral, just a dream and a solid business plan. Never asked for anything except that I run it well and treat my people right." "Is he dangerous?" Maria had looked at her directly. "Yes, very. But not to people who don't deserve it. Victor has rules, lines, and he's absolutely ruthless about enforcing them." "Do you know what happened with Derek? Really happened?" "I know Victor made a problem go away. I know you're safe now. The details?" Maria shrugged. "Not my business. Victor handles things his way. I've learned not to look too closely at the how, just be grateful for the results." The conversation had stayed with Lena, raised as many questions as it answered. She knew Victor had threatened Derek, had dismantled his life with surgical precision. But what else had happened? What had Marco actually said during that meeting at the auto shop? What other pressures had Victor applied to ensure Derek stayed gone? The answer came 5 weeks after Lena's emergency call, delivered in the form of Victor appearing at Lucia's just as the dinner rush was winding down. "Do you have a minute?" he asked quietly, appearing beside her at the host stand where she was reviewing tomorrow's reservations. Something in his tone made Lena's stomach tighten. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong, but we need to talk. Privately." They went to Maria's office, a small room crammed with filing cabinets and restaurant supply catalogs. Victor closed the door, gestured for Lena to sit. He remained standing, hands in his coat pockets, expression unreadable. "Derek Morrison tried to come back," he said without preamble. The words hit Lena like ice water. "What?" "3 days ago. He made it as far as the city limits before my people intercepted him." Victor's voice remained calm, professional. "He's been drinking heavily, burned through most of the money from selling the business. Convinced himself that you were the reason his life fell apart, that if he could just talk to you, he could fix everything." Lena's hands started shaking. She pressed them flat against her thighs, willing them still. "Did he know where I was?" "No. He went to your old apartment first, found new tenants, then to the diner where you used to work. They told him you'd quit weeks ago. He was asking around, showing people your picture, trying to find you. Oh my stars! Lena's voice came out strangled. He's looking for me. After everything, he's still... He was looking for you, Victor corrected gently. Past tense. He won't be looking anymore. The emphasis on past tense made Lena look up sharply. What did you do? Victor pulled a chair over, sat down across from her so they were eye level. I want you to understand something first. Everything I'm about to tell you, I did for very specific reasons. None of it was personal vindictiveness. None of it was cruelty for its own sake. Everything served a purpose. Victor, what did you do? He met her eyes steadily. I made Derek Morrison understand that returning to this city, pursuing you in any capacity, or speaking your name to another living soul would result in consequences he couldn't survive. How? Marco picked him up at a bar on the east side, brought him to a place I own, quiet, private, soundproof. Derek spent 6 hours in a room with me and 2 associates. We had a very thorough conversation about choices and consequences. Lena's heart was pounding. Did you hurt him? I didn't touch him, didn't need to. Victor's expression remained neutral. I showed him evidence, Lena. Everything I'd compiled over the past 5 weeks. Photos of your injuries from the hospital. Medical records documenting broken bones, bruises, sprains from the past 3 years. Injuries you'd explained away as accidents or clumsiness. Statements from your former coworkers at the diner who'd noticed but stayed silent. Testimony from neighbors who'd heard you screaming and called the police, only to have you deny everything when officers arrived. Lena felt tears burning. Where did you get all that? I have resources, and I've spent 5 weeks using them to build an absolutely airtight case documenting Derek's systematic abuse. Dates, times, witnesses, physical evidence, everything a prosecutor would need to send him away for years. You're going to have him arrested? No, I'm going to give him a choice that makes prison look merciful. Victor pulled a folder from inside his coat, set it on the desk between them. Lena stared at it like it might bite. This contains everything: the medical records, the witness statements, the evidence of his violence. It also contains evidence of other crimes: financial fraud at the auto parts business, tax evasion, insurance fraud. Separately, none of it would amount to much. Together, it's a life sentence. Victor's voice was clinical, almost gentle. I explained to Derek that this evidence could disappear. All of it, every piece, in exchange for his complete cooperation. Cooperation with what? With leaving your life permanently. With signing legal documents that strip him of any claim to your shared assets, that waive his right to contact you, that acknowledge his abuse and surrender any legal grounds for future harassment. With providing a recorded confession detailing his violence that will be held in trust. If he ever violates the agreement, that confession goes to the police and the district attorney. Lena tried to process this. He agreed to that. He had motivation to agree. I showed him what happens if he doesn't. Victor opened the folder, revealed a series of photographs. These are other men who violated protection orders, who stalked their ex-partners, who couldn't accept that their victims had escaped. I explained to Derek in very specific terms what happened to each of them. Lena looked at the photos. Men in hospital beds, men in wheelchairs, men with haunted eyes and visible scars. You did this to them? Some of them. Others were handled by associates. The details don't matter. What matters is that Derek understood these weren't threats. They were predictions based on established patterns. That's... Lena's voice failed, started again. That's torture, psychological torture. Yes. Victor didn't deny it, didn't justify it. It was 6 hours of systematic psychological pressure designed to break Derek's certainty that he could act without consequences. I made him watch videos of his own violence, security footage from your apartment building, recordings from neighbors, evidence he didn't know existed. I made him confront what he'd done to you without the comfortable lies he'd told himself. Why are you telling me this? Because you have a right to know. Because I promised I'd handle Derek, but I never explained exactly what that meant. And because you need to decide if you can live with the methods I used. Lena stared at the folder, at the evidence of Victor's ruthless efficiency. Part of her wanted to be horrified, wanted to insist this was wrong. that there were proper channels and legal remedies. But she remembered Derek's boot crushing her broken arm, remembered 5 years of carefully managed violence, remembered the certainty in his eyes that he owned her, that she would never escape, that he could hurt her forever without facing real consequences. "Did he cry?" she asked quietly. Victor nodded once. "Multiple times. He begged. He made promises. He tried to bargain. Eventually, he broke completely and signed everything I put in front of him." "Good." The word surprised them both. Lena looked up at Victor, saw something that might have been respect in his gray eyes. "You're not angry that I did this without consulting you first?" he asked. "I'm angry it was necessary. I'm angry that legal channels wouldn't have protected me, that restraining orders are just paper against men like Derek, that the system would have required me to prove my abuse over and over while he walked free." Lena's voice steadied as she spoke, finding strength in articulating truths she'd always known but never voiced. "But I'm not angry at you for doing what needed to be done." Victor studied her silently for a moment. Most people would be horrified. Most people haven't lived what I lived. Most people don't understand that monsters don't respond to kindness or second chances. They respond to force, to consequences they actually fear. Lena reached for the folder, flipped through the documents. "What happens now?" "Derek signed everything. The confession is notarized and held by my attorney with instructions to release it to authorities if Derek violates any terms. He's already left the city again, drove straight to the airport, bought a one-way ticket to Arizona. I have people monitoring his movements. If he so much as books a flight back to the state, I'll know. And if he comes back anyway, then the confession goes to the police, and I make good on every promise I made during those 6 hours." Victor's tone left no room for doubt. "But he won't come back. Men like Derek are fundamentally cowards. Once they truly understand they're not invincible, they collapse. Derek understands now. He won't risk it." Lena found Derek's signed confession in the folder. His handwriting was shaky, almost illegible. She read his words, clinical descriptions of violence he'd inflicted, dates and details that matched her memories exactly. Reading it should have felt vindicating. Instead, it just felt sad. 5 years of her life reduced to a legal document, evidence of pain cataloged like inventory. "Can I keep this?" she asked. "The confession? It needs to stay with my attorney for legal reasons, but I can have copies made for your records if you want." "I do. I want proof that this happened, that it wasn't just in my head, that I wasn't overreacting or being too sensitive or any of the other things he made me believe." Victor pulled out his phone, sent a quick text. "Done. My attorney will send you certified copies tomorrow." They sat in silence for a moment. Outside the office, Lena could hear the kitchen staff cleaning up, the familiar sounds of a restaurant transitioning from service to closing. Normal sounds. Safe sounds. The sounds of a life she was rebuilding piece by careful piece. "Thank you," Lena said finally, "for doing what needed to be done, for making sure he can't hurt me again." "You don't need to thank me for basic decency." "It's not basic decency. Most people wouldn't do a fraction of what you've done. Most people would have called the police that first night and washed their hands of the whole situation." Lena met his eyes. "You didn't just save my life, Victor. You gave me the tools to rebuild it. That's not nothing. You would have rebuilt it anyway. You're stronger than you think." "Maybe. But it would have taken longer, been harder. Derek would have found ways to interfere, to drag me back, to make me pay for leaving." Lena closed the folder, pushed it back toward Victor. "Now he can't. Because you made it impossible. You didn't just remove him from my life. You removed me from his. Made it so he has to forget I exist or face consequences he actually fears. That's not rescue. That's justice." Victor's expression shifted slightly, something almost vulnerable flickering beneath his controlled surface. "Justice is a generous word for what I did." "What would you call it?" "Preventative action, strategic intimidation, leveraging fear to modify behavior." Victor stood, picked up the folder. "The legal system calls it extortion and assault. Derek could theoretically press charges, but he won't. No, he won't. Because doing so would require admitting what happened in that room, which would require explaining why it happened, which leads directly back to 5 years of documented abuse. Derek made a rational choice based on complete information. He chose self-preservation." Lena stood too, steadier than she'd been when this conversation started. I should get back to work. We're still finishing closing procedures. Of course. Victor moved toward the door, then paused. Lena? What I did to Derek, the psychological pressure, the systematic breaking down of his defenses, that's not something I'm proud of. It was necessary, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat, but it's not who I want to be. Who do you want to be? The question seemed to catch him off guard. He was quiet for a long moment, studying her with those sharp gray eyes. Someone who doesn't have to use fear as a tool. Someone who can help people without becoming the thing their abusers were afraid of. He smiled slightly, sadly. But wanting to be something and being able to actually become it are two different things. I am what I am. I've made my choices. Your choices saved my life. And ruined Derek's. I'm comfortable with that trade-off, but let's not pretend there's no cost. There's always a cost. He left before Lena could respond, disappearing into the restaurant's main dining room like a shadow. She stood in Maria's office for another minute, processing everything she'd learned. Derek was truly gone. Not just physically absent, but legally, psychologically, completely removed from her life. Victor had done what the police couldn't or wouldn't do, made her abuser face real consequences, made him afraid, made him understand that touching Lena again would be the last free choice he ever made. It should have felt wrong. It probably was wrong by conventional moral standards. But Lena couldn't bring herself to care about conventional morality when conventional morality had left her bleeding on a bathroom floor with a broken arm. Victor had used fear and force and psychological torture to protect her. He'd become something dark and frightening to ensure Derek never hurt anyone again. He'd crossed lines that most people wouldn't even approach. And Lena was grateful. Deeply, profoundly grateful in a way that made her chest ache. She returned to the dining room where Maria was counting the register. Her boss looked up, read something in Lena's expression. Everything okay? Yeah. Lena picked up the reservation book, began her closing routine. Everything's going to be okay. For the first time since making that desperate phone call 5 weeks ago, Lena actually believed it. Well, the next morning, a thick envelope arrived by courier. Certified copies of Derek's confession, signed and notarized, sealed in plastic sleeves like the legal evidence they were. Lena read through them once, slowly, forcing herself to confront every detail. Then she locked them in the small safe Victor had installed in her apartment, next to her passport and birth certificate and the other documents that proved she existed. The confession was proof too, proof that her pain had been real, that her fear had been justified, that she hadn't imagined the horror of those 5 years. She didn't need to look at it again. Just knowing it existed was enough. Her therapy session that afternoon was the hardest yet. Dr. Chen listened quietly as Lena described Victor's methods, Derek's breakdown. The confession now locked in her safe. The therapist's face remained neutral, professional, giving nothing away. How do you feel about what Victor did? Dr. Chen asked when Lena finished. Grateful. Relieved. A little scared by how grateful I am. Lena twisted her hands together. Is that wrong? Should I be horrified instead? There's no should when it comes to feelings. You feel what you feel. The question is whether those feelings serve you or harm you. Dr. Chen leaned forward slightly. Do you feel like Victor's actions were proportionate to the threat Derek posed? Yes, absolutely. Derek would have kept coming back, kept trying to hurt me. Legal remedies wouldn't have stopped him. They never do with men like him. Lena's voice was fierce, certain. Victor did what needed to be done. And the methods he used, the psychological torture, the systematic breaking down of Derek's sense of safety, does that concern you? It would concern me if he'd done it to someone who didn't deserve it. But Derek did deserve it. He earned every second of those 6 hours. Lena paused. That makes me sound vindictive, cruel. It makes you sound human. Wanting your abuser to suffer consequences isn't cruel. It's a natural response to years of unchecked violence. Dr. Chen's tone was gentle but firm. The question isn't whether Derek deserved what happened. The question is whether you can live with the knowledge of what was done in your name. Lena thought about that. Could she live with knowing Victor had terrified Derek into submission? Could she accept that her safety had been purchased through fear and force? Yes, she said finally. I can live with it. Because the alternative was living in fear forever, Always looking over my shoulder, always waiting for Derek to find me and finish what he started. Victor took that fear away. I'll carry the weight of his methods if it means I get to be free. Dr. Chen nodded slowly. That's a choice you're allowed to make. Just be aware that choices like these have long-term psychological impacts. Knowing violence was done on your behalf, even justified violence, can affect how you see yourself in the world. I already know the world is violent. I already know that sometimes force is the only language abusers understand. Lena met her therapist's eyes. Victor didn't teach me that. Derek did. Victor just used that knowledge to protect me instead of hurt me. Fair enough. But let's talk about what happens now. Derek is gone, truly gone this time. How does that change things for you? The question opened something in Lena's chest. How did it change things? She'd spent 5 weeks in a strange limbo, free but not quite safe, healing but not quite whole. Now Derek was truly neutralized, not just absent, but legally and psychologically bound to stay away. It means I can stop looking over my shoulder, Lena said slowly, working it out as she spoke. I can plan for a future that extends beyond next week. I can make choices based on what I want instead of what keeps me safest. I can just exist without fear. That's significant. That's transformative, Dr. Chen smiled. What do you want to do with that freedom? Lena thought about her job at Lucia's, about Maria's quiet confidence in her abilities, about the way the restaurant's rhythms had become comforting instead of chaotic. She thought about this apartment with its locked doors and panic buttons, about therapy sessions where she slowly unpacked years of trauma, about the careful network of support Victor had built around her. I want to be good at my job, really good. I want to prove Maria right for believing in me. Lena's voice grew stronger. I want to keep going to therapy until I've processed all of this, until I understand who I am without the fear. And I want to help other people the way Victor helped me. What does that look like? I don't know yet, but there are other women like me, women trapped, women afraid, women who don't know how to escape. Maybe I can help them. Maybe surviving all this means something if I use it to help others survive too. Dr. Chen's smile widened. That's a beautiful goal and very achievable. There are organizations that work with domestic violence survivors, that need people with your lived experience to mentor others, to show them that escape is possible. I'd like that. Not now, I'm not ready now. But someday, when I'm stronger. You're already stronger than you think. But yes, take the time you need. Healing isn't a race. The session ended with homework. Write down 3 things Lena wanted to accomplish now that Derek was truly gone. Not survival goals, not safety goals. Actual aspirations for the future. Things she wanted to do, become, experience. Lena went home and stared at a blank page for an hour before finally writing. 1. Become the kind of manager Maria is. Someone who sees potential in broken people and gives them room to heal while they work. 2. Help other survivors escape their abusers the way Victor helped me escape mine. 3. Learn to trust my own judgment again. Learn to take up space. Learn to be loud. The goals felt audacious, almost arrogant. Who was she to think she could accomplish any of this? She was just a waitress with a broken arm and 5 years of trauma, stumbling towards something that resembled a functional life. But she was also the woman who'd made the call, who'd chosen survival over silence, who'd taken every tool offered and used it to build something new. Maybe audacious goals were exactly what she needed. 2 weeks later, Lena got confirmation that Derek had settled in Phoenix, found work at a warehouse, and was attending court-mandated anger management classes as part of his agreement with Victor. He was complying with every term, avoiding alcohol, staying away from relationships. He's behaving, Marco told her during one of his periodic check-ins. Victor sent him by every week or so, ostensibly to make sure Lena had everything she needed, really to provide updates on Derek's movements. Quiet life, keeping his head down. I don't think he'll be a problem. What if he stops being quiet? Marco's expression was stone. Then we remind him why quiet is healthier. The certainty in his voice should have been troubling. Instead, Lena found it deeply comforting. Victor's protection wasn't temporary or conditional. It was permanent, enforced by people who understood violence and weren't afraid to use it when necessary. She was learning to be okay with that, learning to accept that sometimes justice existed outside courtrooms and legal systems. Sometimes justice was a man named Marco, making sure your abuser stayed terrified enough to behave. Sometimes justice was a broken man in Phoenix, looking over his shoulder, knowing that the woman he'd spent 5 years hurting was finally, completely out of his reach. And sometimes justice was simply getting to live without fear. Lena chose to believe in that kind of justice, chose to be grateful for the methods that made it possible, chose to move forward instead of looking back. Derek was gone. The fear was fading, the future was wide open, and Lena Parker was finally free. Freedom, Lena discovered, was harder than survival. Survival had rules. Keep your head down. Don't provoke. Anticipate danger. Move carefully through the world like you're made of glass. Survival was a well-worn path, painful but familiar, and Lena had walked it so long she'd memorized every step. Freedom had no map. 3 months after Derek's departure, Lena stood in Lucia's kitchen at 2 a.m, unable to sleep, unable to stop the thoughts racing through her mind. She'd been promoted to full manager a week ago. Maria's assistant had relocated for family reasons, and Maria had offered Lena the position without hesitation. The raise was substantial, the responsibility was significant, and Lena had accepted immediately, riding a wave of confidence that felt foreign in her own skin. Now, alone in the quiet restaurant, doubt crept in like smoke under a door. What if she couldn't handle it? What if Maria's faith was misplaced? What if the first real crisis exposed Lena as the fraud she sometimes felt like? A broken woman playing at being whole, pretending competence she didn't actually possess? Her phone buzzed. A text from Victor. Saw the kitchen light from the street. Everything okay? Lena looked toward the front windows, saw a familiar black sedan parked across the street. Of course Victor was out at 2 a.m. Of course he'd noticed her light. The man seemed to operate on a different circadian rhythm than normal humans, always awake, always watching, always aware. She texted back, "Can't sleep, mind's too loud." 3 minutes later, Victor appeared at the front door. Lena let him in, locked it behind him. He wore dark jeans and a leather jacket, looking more human than his usual suits allowed. More approachable, almost normal except for the weight he carried in his eyes, the burden of a man who'd seen and done too much to ever be truly at ease. "What's got your mind racing at 2 a.m.?" he asked, following her to the bar where she'd been sitting with herbal tea and a notebook full of scribbled anxieties. Everything. Nothing. The promotion mostly. Lena poured Victor a coffee from the pot she'd brewed. He took it black. Always, no sugar or cream to soften the bitter edge. "Maria thinks I'm ready. I'm not sure I agree." Maria's built 3 successful restaurants from nothing. She knows talent when she sees it. Victor settled onto a bar stool, cradled the coffee cup in his scarred hands. "What specifically are you worried about?" "That I'll mess up, that I'll make some critical mistake and ruin everything Maria's built. That I'm only good at this job because I spent 5 years learning to manage Derek's chaos. And that's not actually a transferable skill. It's just trauma dressed up as competence." Victor was quiet for a moment, considering her words with the same careful attention he gave everything. "You think your ability to read situations, anticipate problems, and stay calm under pressure is just trauma, isn't it? It's a skill set born from trauma. That's different from being just trauma." Victor sipped his coffee. A surgeon develops steady hands through years of practice. A soldier develops tactical awareness through combat experience. Your ability to manage chaos came from a terrible place, but that doesn't make the ability less valuable. You've simply learned to redirect it toward something constructive. Dr. Chen said something similar. "Dr. Chen is smart. You should listen to her." Victor smiled slightly. "And to Maria, and to me. We all see the same thing, someone capable, intelligent, and resilient who hasn't quite accepted those truths about herself yet." Lena traced the rim of her teacup, not meeting his eyes. "It's easier to believe I'm broken than to believe I'm actually okay. Being broken has rules. Being okay means I have to figure out who I am without the fear and the survival mode and all the things that defined me for so long. That's terrifying. Completely terrifying." Lena looked up at him. "How did you do it? After your sister? How did you figure out who you were when the grief stopped being the loudest thing in your life?" Victor's expression shifted, old pain surfacing briefly before he controlled it. Honestly, I didn't. I just became someone new, someone who could live with what happened and what I couldn't prevent. The person I was before Elena died, that version of me is gone. I'm what's left after the grief burned through everything soft. That's bleak. But it's realistic. Trauma changes you, Lena. Fundamentally, you don't go back to who you were before. That person doesn't exist anymore. You just become someone new who carries the weight of what happened. Victor set down his coffee cup. But here's the thing. Nobody tells you. That new person can be stronger, wiser, more compassionate. The trauma doesn't have to define you, but it will shape you. The question is whether you let it shape you into something bitter or something better. I don't want to be bitter. Then don't be. Choose differently. Every day make the active choice to use what you learn to build instead of destroy, to help instead of hurt, to be the person you needed when you were trapped. The words landed like a key turning in a lock. Lena felt something shift inside her chest, a subtle realignment of perspective. She wasn't broken. She was changed. And change could be growth instead of damage if she chose to see it that way. Thank you, she said quietly, for being here, for checking on me, for saying the things I needed to hear. That's what friends do. Friends. The word hung between them, simple and profound. When had they become friends? Somewhere between the desperate phone call and this quiet 2 a.m. conversation, their relationship had evolved beyond protector and protected. They'd become something else, something harder to define but somehow essential. Are we friends? Lena asked. Really? Or am I just a project to you, another broken person you're trying to fix to make up for Elena? Victor didn't flinch from the directness of the question. You were a project at first. I won't lie about that. When you called that night, I saw my sister, saw a chance to rewrite an ending I couldn't change. But somewhere in the past 3 months, you stopped being Elena's ghost and became Lena, yourself. Someone I actually enjoy talking to, someone whose growth I admire, someone I consider a friend. When did that shift happen? The day you told me you wanted to help other survivors, that you wanted to turn your pain into something useful instead of just healing privately and moving on. Victor met her eyes. That's when I knew you weren't just surviving. You were actively choosing who you wanted to become. That choice is what makes you you, not my projection of my sister. Lena felt tears prickling, but they weren't sad tears. They were the tears of being seen, truly seen, by someone who understood the weight of survival. I'm scared I'll let you down, let Maria down, let myself down. You will sometimes, everyone does. The measure of a person isn't perfection, it's how they handle imperfection, how they learn, adapt, grow. Victor stood, pulled on his jacket. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be busy and you'll need your energy to be brilliant. I'm not brilliant. Not yet. But you're getting there. He headed toward the door, then paused. Lena, stop comparing yourself to who you were before Derek or who you think you should be. Just be who you are right now in this moment. That person is more than enough. After he left, Lena sat in the quiet restaurant for another hour, letting his words sink in. Stop comparing, start accepting. Be present instead of haunted. She could do that. Maybe not perfectly, maybe not consistently, but she could try, and trying was enough. The next 6 weeks were a masterclass in learning to trust herself. Maria had been serious about the promotion. Lena wasn't just managing day-to-day operations. She was making real decisions that affected the restaurant's bottom line. Hiring and firing, menu development input, resolving vendor disputes, training new staff. Every choice mattered, and every choice was hers to make. She made mistakes. Hired a bartender who looked great on paper but couldn't handle the Friday night rush. Approved a menu special that didn't sell. Misread a scheduling conflict that left them short-staffed during a private event. But she also made brilliant calls, noticed a pattern of customer complaints about wait times, and restructured the seating algorithm to improve flow. Caught a supplier padding invoices and negotiated better rates. Identified a server with natural leadership ability and convinced Maria to move her into a supervisor role. The wins outweighed the losses. And more importantly, Lena learned that mistakes weren't catastrophic. They were just information. Data points to inform better decisions next time. You're thriving, Dr. Chen observed during a therapy session. The change in you over the past month has been remarkable. I still have bad days. Days where I wake up anxious, convinced Derek's going to appear, convinced this is all temporary. Of course you do. Healing isn't linear. You're allowed to have setbacks. Doctor. Chen leaned back in her chair. But notice what you just said. Bad days, plural. Not bad weeks or bad months. You're having isolated, difficult moments instead of extended periods of crisis. That's significant progress. Lena realized Dr. Chen was right. The fear that had once been a constant companion now only appeared occasionally, triggered by specific things. A man who resembled Derek's build, the smell of bourbon, raised voices. But even then, the fear was manageable, temporary, not all-consuming the way it used to be. I'm getting better, Lena said, testing the words. I'm actually healing. You are. And you've earned every bit of that healing through hard work and courage. The validation felt good, real. Lena was learning to accept compliments without immediately deflecting or dismissing them, learning that acknowledging her own growth wasn't arrogance, it was honesty. Her cast came off that week, 6 weeks almost to the day after the break. Doctor. Reeves removed it carefully, revealed pale skin and atrophied muscles beneath. The arm looked wrong somehow, smaller and weaker than Lena remembered. Physical therapy starts next week, Dr. Reeves said, examining the healed bone on x-rays. You'll need to rebuild strength and flexibility. It'll take time, but you should regain full function. How long? 3 to 6 months for complete recovery, but you'll notice improvement within weeks. Dr. Reeves met Lena's eyes. How are you doing otherwise? Last time I saw you, you were in a pretty difficult situation. I'm better. Much better. I'm safe now. Good. I'm glad to hear it. Dr. Reeves made some notes in Lena's chart. The man who brought you in that night, Mr. Salerno, he's been checking in periodically to make sure you're getting proper follow-up care. Should I continue updating him? Lena felt a warmth in her chest. Of course, Victor had been checking. Of course, he'd stayed involved even in the small details of her recovery. Yes, please. He's a friend. He cares. He must. I've been practicing medicine for 15 years, and I've never seen someone follow up on another person's treatment so consistently unless they're family. Dr. Reeves smiled. You're lucky to have people who care like that. I know. I'm very lucky. Walking out of the hospital with both arms free felt symbolic. One more piece of Derek's damage, healed. One more sign that she was moving forward instead of staying trapped in trauma. Victor texted her that evening. Heard the cast came off. How's it feel? Lena typed back. Strange, weak, but free. Starting PT next week. Good. Let me know if you need anything. Proud of you. There it was again, that simple phrase that meant so much coming from him. Proud of you. Like she was accomplishing something worth recognizing. Like her healing mattered. She decided to do something she'd been avoiding for weeks. Something Dr. Chen had suggested multiple times, but Lena had always found an excuse to postpone. She called her mother. They hadn't spoken since before Derek, since Lena had slowly withdrawn from her family as the abuse escalated. Derek had encouraged the isolation, praised her for being independent, made her feel guilty for every phone call home. By the end, Lena had stopped calling entirely, too ashamed to let her mother hear the fear in her voice, too afraid Derek would punish her for seeking support. Now, standing in her safe apartment with the city lights spread before her, Lena dialed the number she'd memorized as a child. Hello? Her mother's voice was cautious, uncertain. They'd been burned by too many scam calls to trust unknown numbers. Mom, it's Lena. Silence. Then, Lena? Baby, is that really you? It's me, Mom. I'm sorry I haven't called. I'm sorry I disappeared. Lena's voice cracked. I'm sorry for everything. Where are you? Are you okay? I've been so worried, sweetheart. I called your old number 100 times, but it was disconnected, and I didn't know how to find you. I'm okay. I'm in the city still. I left Derek. I should have left years ago, but I finally did it. Her mother's sharp intake of breath told Lena everything she needed to know. Her mother had known. Maybe not the full extent, but she'd known something was wrong. Did he hurt you? Her mother asked, her voice tight with controlled emotion. Yes, for a long time. But I'm safe now. I have help. I have protection. And I'm healing. They talked for 2 hours. Lena told her mother an edited version of events, enough truth to explain her absence, not so much detail that her mother would be burdened with the full horror. She talked about her job, her therapy, the apartment, the network of people who'd appeared to support her. She didn't mention Victor's methods or Derek's confession or the 6 hours of psychological torture that ensured her safety. Some truths were hers to carry alone. I want to see you, her mother said finally. When you're ready. No pressure, but I need to see with my own eyes that you're okay. Soon, Lena promised. Maybe next month? I need a little more time to be steady first. Whenever you're ready, baby. I'm just so glad you're alive. I'm so glad you got out. After hanging up, Lena cried, deep, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere primal. But they weren't sad tears exactly. They were release. Relief. The overwhelming gratitude of being allowed to come home, to reconnect with family, to rebuild bridges she'd thought were burned forever. She texted Dr. Chen. Called my mom. It was hard but good. Thank you for pushing me to do it, doctor. Chen's response came quickly. So proud of you. That took enormous courage. We'll process it in session. Then she texted Victor. Making progress. Scary progress. But progress. His reply, the scary kind is usually the most important. Keep going. Upticked. 4 months after the emergency call that changed everything, Lena met someone who reminded her why she'd survived. The woman appeared at Lucia's on a quiet Tuesday afternoon asking for an application. She was young, maybe 25, with careful makeup that didn't quite hide a fading bruise on her jaw. She moved like someone trying to be invisible, spoke in a voice barely above a whisper, apologized twice just for asking about employment. Lena recognized her immediately. Not the person, but the pattern, the body language, the fear wrapped in politeness. This was what she'd looked like a year ago, 6 months ago. This was survival mode incarnate. I'm Lena, the manager here, she said gently, extending her hand. What's your name? Sophie. Sophie Martinez. The woman's handshake was limp, brief. I'm sorry to bother you. I know you're probably not hiring right now. We're always open to good people. Have a seat. Lena gestured to a table near the window, away from the kitchen noise. Can I get you something to drink? Coffee? Water? Water's fine. Thank you. I'm sorry. You don't need to apologize. You're not bothering me. Lena brought 2 waters, sat down across from Sophie. Tell me about your experience. Sophie's resume was thin but showed potential. 3 years waitressing at various restaurants, though the employment gaps were telling. 6 weeks here, 2 months there, nothing lasting longer than 4 months. The pattern of someone who kept having to relocate. To run. They talked for 20 minutes. Sophie was nervous but competent, clearly experienced despite her youth. She needed full-time hours, could work any shift, had no transportation issues despite not owning a car. She'd walk or take the bus, she insisted. When did you leave him? Lena asked quietly. Sophie froze. I don't... What? The person who gave you that bruise. When did you leave? Color drained from Sophie's face. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. And it's okay. You're safe here. I'm not judging you. I'm asking because I've been where you are. Lena pushed up her sleeve, showed the faint scars on her wrist where Derek had grabbed her so hard he'd broken skin. 4 months ago, I was you, scared, running, trying to rebuild with nothing. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. Last week. I left last week. I've been staying at a shelter, but I need money for my own place. Need to prove I can make it on my own, so he can't... She stopped, swallowed hard. So I can be safe. I'm going to hire you, Lena said. Not because I feel sorry for you, but because you're qualified and we need someone. But I'm also going to help you the way someone helped me. I can't accept charity. It's not charity. It's solidarity. Lena pulled out her phone, pulled up Victor's contact. She hesitated only a moment before typing. Found someone who needs what you gave me. Can you help? His response was immediate. Address? Lena gave him the restaurant's address, then looked at Sophie. I have a friend who specializes in keeping people safe from dangerous exes. He's going to meet us here in about 20 minutes. You don't have to talk to him if you don't want to, but if you do, he can help make sure you stay safe. I can't afford. He doesn't charge. This is what he does. Lena reached across the table, stopped just short of touching Sophie's hand. She remembered not wanting to be touched, how even kind contact felt invasive when you were raw. I know how hard it is to trust strangers. I know how scary it is to accept help. But I also know what happens when you try to do everything alone. Please, let us help. Sophie stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. Okay, but just a conversation. I'm not promising anything. That's all I'm asking. Victor arrived 18 minutes later, somehow looking both intimidating and approachable in dark slacks and a button-down shirt. Lena made introductions, then excused herself to give them privacy, watching from the bar as Victor employed the same calm, patient approach he'd used with her. They talked for 40 minutes. Lena saw Sophie's body language shift from defensive to cautiously hopeful. Saw Victor hand her a business card. Saw Sophie actually smile briefly before leaving with a promise to start work at Lucia's next Monday. After Sophie left, Victor joined Lena at the bar. Well? She asked. Boyfriend's in jail for assault. Not her assault, someone else's. Gets out in 2 weeks. She's terrified he'll find her. Victor accepted the coffee Lena poured for him. I'm going to set her up with the same protection I gave you. Safe housing, legal support, monitoring to make sure the boyfriend stays away. Marco's already running background on the guy. You didn't hesitate. Why would I? You asked for help for someone who needs it. Of course I'm going to help. Victor studied her face. This is what you wanted, isn't it? To help other survivors the way you were helped? Yes, but I didn't think I'd get to start so soon. I thought I needed to be more healed first. You're healed enough to recognize someone in trouble and offer them a lifeline. That's all it takes. Victor smiled, something warm and genuine. You're doing exactly what you set out to do, Lena. You're becoming who you wanted to be. Lena felt pride swell in her chest, unfamiliar but welcome. She'd helped someone. Actually helped. Not just offered empty sympathy or useless advice. She'd seen Sophie's fear and met it with concrete solutions, with resources, with the same network of support that had saved her own life. This was what healing looked like. Not just recovering from trauma, but using that trauma to help others recover. Not just surviving, but teaching others how to survive. Thank you, Lena said, for helping her, for helping me, for being someone who gives a damn when most people would just look away. Stop thanking me. You did the hard part. You noticed her. You reached out. You asked for help on her behalf. All I did was show up. Victor stood, prepared to leave. Sophie starts Monday? Monday. I'll make sure she's paired with our best server for training. Keep her busy. Keep her mind occupied. Good plan. Keep me updated on how she does. After Victor left, Lena stood in the quiet restaurant and felt something she'd been chasing for months finally click into place. Purpose. She had actual purpose now, beyond just surviving day to day. She could help people. Could use her pain to ease someone else's. Could be the person she'd needed when she was trapped. She pulled out her phone, texted Dr. Chen. Helped someone today. Someone like me. It felt good. Really good. Dr. Chen. That's beautiful. We'll discuss it Thursday. This is a huge milestone. It was. Lena knew it was. This was the moment she stopped being a victim and became a survivor. Stopped being someone who needed saving and became someone who could save others. The transformation wasn't complete. She still had hard days, still struggled with anxiety and hypervigilance and the occasional nightmare. But she was moving forward, growing, becoming, and that was enough. Sophie thrived at Lucia's in ways that reminded Lena of her own transformation, only faster, more visible. Within 3 weeks, the young woman's careful whisper had become a confident voice. Within 6, she was laughing openly with customers, her shoulders no longer hunched in perpetual defense. The bruise on her jaw faded completely, and Sophie stopped wearing the heavy makeup meant to hide it. She's doing really well, Maria commented one evening, watching Sophie expertly manage a difficult table that had sent back their appetizers twice. You were right about her. I recognize something, Lena said quietly. Someone gave me a chance when I needed it most. Seemed right to pass that forward. Maria gave her an appraising look. Victor told me what you did, how you spotted her situation and reached out. That took guts and awareness most managers wouldn't have. Victor talks to you about me? Sometimes. When he's checking in on the restaurants, he asks how you're doing. Professional interest mostly, though I think it's become more than that. Maria paused. He cares about you, Lena. Really cares. You know that, right? Lena felt heat rise in her cheeks. We're friends. He helped me escape a bad situation. That's all. Is it? Maria's tone was gentle, not prying. Because from where I'm standing, Victor Salerno doesn't spend this much time and energy on just anyone. I've known him 6 years, and I've never seen him this invested in someone's well-being, not even close. The observation landed strangely in Lena's chest. She'd been so focused on healing, on building independence, on proving she could stand alone that she hadn't really examined what was developing between her and Victor. They had dinner together weekly now, conversations that stretched for hours, covering everything from philosophy to terrible movies to childhood memories. He texted her random thoughts throughout the day. She found herself sharing victories and frustrations with him before anyone else. When had he stopped being her protector and become her person? I don't know what we are, Lena admitted. I don't know if I'm capable of being more than friends with anyone right now. The thought of dating, of being vulnerable with someone that way. She shook her head. It terrifies me. That's understandable. You're still healing, but healing doesn't mean shutting yourself off from connection forever. Maria squeezed her shoulder briefly. Just something to think about. Not every man is Derek. Some of them are actually worth the risk. The conversation stayed with Lena through the rest of the shift, through the closing routines, through the walk back to her apartment in the November darkness. 7 months had passed since that desperate phone call. 7 months of therapy and hard work, and slowly rebuilding herself into someone she could be proud of. She'd accomplished everything on her therapy homework list. She was a manager Maria trusted completely. She was helping other survivors through both her work with Sophie and volunteer shifts at the women's shelter Victor had connected her with. She'd learned to take up space, to be loud when necessary, to trust her own judgment. She was standing alone, strong, independent, whole. So why did Maria's question keep echoing in her mind? Why did the thought of Victor as something more than a friend make her chest tight with something that wasn't quite fear? Her phone buzzed as she unlocked her apartment door. Victor. Dinner tomorrow. There's something I want to discuss. The formal phrasing was unusual. Victor typically just suggested restaurants or asked if she was free. Something I want to discuss sounded serious. Important. Lena typed back. Sure. Everything okay? Everything's fine. Just time we had a conversation. Pick you up at 7? Okay. She tried not to overthink it, tried to focus on her evening routine. Shower, tea, reading before bed. But her mind kept circling back to that phrase. A conversation. About what? Had she done something wrong? Was Victor pulling back his support? Had something happened with Derek? By the time 7 o'clock arrived the next evening, Lena had worked herself into a quiet anxiety. She dressed carefully in a deep blue dress Maria had helped her pick out weeks ago, something that made her feel confident without trying too hard. Her hair fell loose around her shoulders, and for the first time in years she actually liked what she saw in the mirror. Not the broken woman from 7 months ago, someone new, someone stronger. Victor arrived exactly on time, as always. But when Lena opened the door, she saw something shift in his expression. A flash of appreciation quickly controlled, replaced by his usual composed warmth. You look beautiful, he said simply. Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself. It was true. Victor wore a dark suit that emphasized his height and the silver at his temples, looking every inch the dangerous man he was, but also somehow elegant, refined. They drove to a restaurant Lena had never been to, an intimate Italian place in a quiet neighborhood. The host greeted Victor by name, led them to a corner table with enough privacy for real conversation, but not so isolated it felt staged. Over appetizers and wine, Lena had started drinking again, carefully, proving to herself she could have one glass without spiraling into the memories of Derek's bourbon-fueled rages. They talked about work, about Sophie's progress, about the shelter where Lena had started volunteering. They asked if I'd consider joining their board, Lena said, still marveling at the invitation. Me, on a board of directors. 6 months ago, I could barely make a phone call without panicking, and now they want me helping guide organizational strategy. You should do it, Victor said immediately. You have valuable perspective they need. Lived experience matters more than credentials in that kind of work. I'm thinking about it. It feels like a lot, but it also feels right. Lena set down her fork. Okay, enough stalling. What did you want to discuss? Victor smiled slightly, acknowledging her directness. He took a slow sip of wine, gathering his thoughts in that careful way he had. 7 months ago, you made a phone call that changed both our lives. You trusted me with your safety when you had no reason to trust anyone. I helped you because I saw someone who deserved better than what she'd been given, someone worth protecting. I remember, Lena said quietly. Since then, I've watched you transform from someone barely surviving into someone thriving, building a career, helping others, becoming the person you were always meant to be before Derek tried to erase you. Victor's gray eyes held hers steadily. I'm proud of you, Lena. Genuinely proud. And I need you to understand that everything I did, getting you to safety, setting you up with housing and work, handling Derek, I'd do it all again with no expectations of anything in return. I know that. You've made it clear from the beginning. Let me finish. His tone was gentle but firm. I need you to hear this, to really understand it, before I say what comes next. Lena's heart started pounding. She nodded. You owe me nothing. Not gratitude, not loyalty, not your time or attention or affection. What I gave you was freely given, and it remains freely given regardless of what happens next. Victor paused. But I need to be honest with you about something that's developed over these past months. Something I didn't anticipate and probably shouldn't feel given the circumstances of how we met. Lena's breath caught. She thought she knew where this was going, but hearing it said aloud would make it real, would require a response, would force her to examine feelings she'd been carefully avoiding. I have feelings for you, Victor said quietly. Real feelings. Not protector to protected, not mentor to student. Actual romantic feelings that I've been trying very hard not to let influence how I treat you or the help I provide. The words hung in the air between them. Lena's mind raced, trying to process, trying to separate what she felt from what she thought she should feel. I'm not asking you to reciprocate, Victor continued. I'm not asking you for anything. I just needed to be honest, because continuing to pretend this is purely friendship feels dishonest, and you deserve honesty from me. You've had too many men lie to you. I won't be another one. How long? Lena's voice came out barely above a whisper. How long have you felt this way? I'm not sure exactly. It wasn't immediate. That first month, maybe 2 months, you really were just someone I was helping. But somewhere around month 3, when you started making jokes again, when I saw you laugh for the first time, genuinely laugh without fear shadowing it, Victor smiled slightly. That's when I realized I wasn't just invested in your recovery anymore. I was invested in you, in who you are, in knowing you. This is complicated, Lena managed. Extremely complicated, which is why I've kept it to myself this long. You needed space to heal, to become independent, to learn to stand on your own. You needed to know you could survive without me before we could ever be anything more than what we are now. Victor's expression was open, vulnerable in a way Lena had never seen before. But you've done that work, you're standing on your own, and I didn't want to spend another month lying to you by omission about how I feel. Lena took a long drink of wine, buying time to organize her chaotic thoughts. She'd been attracted to Victor from early on. How could she not be? He was intelligent, powerful, protective, and genuinely kind beneath the dangerous exterior. But she'd convinced herself it was just gratitude, just trauma bonding, just her broken brain confusing safety with affection. Except it wasn't just that, was it? She looked forward to their dinners. She texted him first sometimes now. She'd caught herself wondering what he did when they weren't together, who else occupied his time, whether he was lonely in that enormous life he'd built. She cared about him, not as a protector or a friend, but as something more, something that terrified her because caring about someone meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant risk, and risk meant the possibility of being hurt again. I'm scared, Lena said finally. I'm scared of this. Of us. Of what it could become. I know, That's normal. That's healthy even. Victor leaned forward slightly. I'm not Derek, Lena. I would never hurt you the way he did. Never control you or manipulate you or make you feel small. But I understand that fear isn't rational. It's trauma speaking. And trauma doesn't care about logic. What if I can't do this? What if I'm too broken for a real relationship? You're not broken. You're healing. There's a difference. Victor's voice was firm. And I'm not asking you to jump into anything. I'm just asking if you'd be willing to explore this slowly, at whatever pace feels safe for you. Dinner like this. Conversations. Seeing where it goes without pressure or expectations. What if it doesn't work? What if we try this and I panic or shut down or ruin it somehow? Then we figure it out together. Or we don't and we stay friends. Or we take a break and try again later. There's no timeline here, Lena. No pressure. Just possibility. Victor reached across the table slowly, palm up, an offer rather than a demand. I'm not going anywhere. Whether you want to try dating me or whether you want to keep things as they are, I'm still here. Still your friend. Still someone you can count on. Lena stared at his extended hand. It was such a simple gesture, but it represented everything she'd been afraid of for 7 months. Trust, vulnerability, the choice to let someone in knowing they had the power to hurt her. But Victor wasn't just someone. He was the man who'd answered her desperate call at midnight, who'd faced down her abuser and made her safe, who'd given her tools to rebuild her life without demanding anything in return, who'd been patient and kind and honest, even when honesty was hard. He'd earned her trust 100 times over. The question was whether she was brave enough to give it. Slowly, carefully, Lena placed her hand in his. Victor's fingers closed around hers gently, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. The touch was warm, grounding, safe. I can't promise I'll be good at this, Lena said. I can't promise I won't freak out or need space or struggle with intimacy and trust. I don't need promises. I just need honesty. You tell me what you need, what scares you, what feels good, and what doesn't. I'll do the same. We figure it out as we go. Okay. Lena took a deep breath. Okay. Let's try this. Slowly. The smile that crossed Victor's face was genuine and transformative, turning his severe features into something almost boyish. Slowly. Whatever pace you set, I'll match it. They finished dinner holding hands across the table, talking about everything and nothing. It felt natural, easy, like they'd been doing this for years instead of minutes. When Victor drove her home, he walked her to her apartment door, but didn't push for more than a brief hug, respectful of boundaries, letting Lena control the pace. Thank you, she said, standing in her doorway, for being honest, for giving me a choice, for not making this weird or pressured. Thank you for being brave enough to consider it. I know how much courage this takes for you. Victor stepped back, creating space. Sleep well. Text me when you're ready for another date. Tomorrow, or next week, or next month. Your timeline. After he left, Lena stood in her apartment feeling something she'd almost forgotten was possible. Excitement. Not fear, not anxiety, not the desperate relief of narrowly avoided danger. Actual excitement about a future that included someone else. Someone she chose. Someone who saw her and valued her and wanted to be with her not because he could control her, but because he genuinely enjoyed who she was. She texted Dr. Chen. Victor told me he has feelings for me. I said yes to trying to date him. Please tell me I'm not making a huge mistake. Dr. Chen's response came within minutes. That's wonderful news. We'll process it thoroughly in session, but from what you've shared about him, this sounds healthy and consensual and right for where you are in your healing. Trust yourself. You know what's good for you now. Lena wanted to believe that, wanted to trust her judgment, trust that she could spot red flags now, trust that Victor really was different from Derek. The proof, she supposed, would be in how they built this thing together. The next 3 months were a revelation in how different love could be from control. Victor courted her slowly, carefully, always following Lena's lead. They had dinner twice a week, went to movies, walked through the city on cold winter evenings, talking about everything from philosophy to their childhoods to what scared them most about the future. He never pushed for physical intimacy beyond hand-holding and the occasional kiss goodnight. Never showed up unannounced at her apartment or workplace. Never checked her phone or questioned where she'd been or made her account for her time. He had opinions about her choices but offered them as suggestions, not commands, and respected when she chose differently. This is what healthy looks like, Dr. Chen said during one session. Equal partnership, mutual respect, room to be yourself without fear of punishment or withdrawal of affection. It feels too good, Lena confessed, like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, for Victor to suddenly reveal he's been faking the whole time, and actually he's just like Derek underneath. That's trauma speaking. Derek conditioned you to expect violence after kindness, to see gentleness as manipulation rather than genuine care. Dr. Chen leaned forward. But Victor has been consistent for 9 months now. 9 months of showing you through actions, not just words, that he's safe. At what point do you allow yourself to believe the evidence? It was a fair question. Lena had been holding part of herself back, protecting her heart, waiting for Victor to hurt her. But he kept not hurting her, kept being patient and kind and honest, kept respecting her boundaries and celebrating her victories and supporting her through setbacks. He was there when she had her first panic attack in months, triggered by a random man on the street who looked like Derek from behind. Victor had simply held her hand, reminded her she was safe, didn't make her feel weak or broken for the fear. He was there when she got promoted again. Maria had made her general manager of all 3 Lucia's locations, an enormous responsibility that Lena would have considered impossible a year ago. Victor had taken her to dinner to celebrate, proud and unsurprised, like he'd always known she was capable of extraordinary things. He was there when she gave her first speech at a domestic violence awareness event, sharing her story publicly for the first time. Victor had sat in the audience with tears in his eyes, and afterward told her she was the bravest person he'd ever met. He was just there, consistently, without fail. I think I'm in love with him, Lena told Maria one evening while they reviewed quarterly reports. Like, actually in love. Not trauma bonding, or gratitude, or confusing safety with affection. Real love. Maria grinned. Finally admitting it? I've known for weeks. You light up when he texts. You talk about him constantly. It's adorable. It's terrifying. Love usually is, but it's also wonderful when it's with the right person. Maria's expression softened. Victor's good for you, Lena. He sees who you really are and loves that person. Not some version he wants you to become. Just you, as you are. How do I tell him? Do I just say it? Wait for him to say it first? I don't know the rules for this. There are no rules. You just tell him when you're ready. Trust me, he'll be happy to hear it. Lena waited 3 more weeks, building up courage, finding the right moment. It came on a quiet Sunday morning when Victor had brought coffee to her apartment and they were sitting on the couch watching snow fall over the city. I love you, Lena said, the words quiet but certain. Victor turned to look at her, coffee cup frozen halfway to his lips. What? I love you. I've been trying to figure out if it was real or just trauma or gratitude, but it's not. It's just love. Real, actual, choose you everyday love. Lena met his eyes. You don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know. Victor set down his coffee cup carefully, turned to face her fully. I've been in love with you for months. I was waiting until I thought you were ready to hear it without it feeling like pressure. I'm ready. I love you, Lena Parker. I love your strength and your kindness, and the way you help other people because you remember what it's like to need help. I love your laugh and your terrible taste in movies, and how you always order dessert but never finish it. I love who you are and who you're becoming. Victor's voice was steady, certain, and I promise I will spend every day showing you that love can be safe, that you can be loved without being controlled, that the right person will cherish your independence instead of trying to steal it. Lena felt tears streaming down her face, but they were good tears, happy tears. The tears of someone who'd survived hell and somehow, impossibly, found heaven on the other side. Kiss me, she whispered. Victor did, slowly and carefully, giving her room to pull back if she needed to. But Lena didn't pull back. She leaned in, let herself feel this, let herself believe in the possibility of a future built on love instead of fear. When they broke apart, Victor rested his forehead against hers. You're sure about this? About us? I'm sure. For the first time in my entire adult life, I'm completely sure about something. Lena smiled through her tears. I choose you. Not because I need you to save me, I can save myself now, but because I want you, because life is better with you in it, because you make me feel safe and seen and valued for who I actually am. That's all I've ever wanted, to be chosen instead of needed. You're both, but the choosing comes first now. They spent the rest of the day together, talking about the future in concrete terms for the first time, where this relationship might go, what they both wanted, how to build something healthy and strong on a foundation that had started with crisis. I want you to meet my mother, Lena said that evening. She's been asking about you, wants to thank the person who helped me escape. I'd like that. When? Next weekend? I'm finally ready for her to visit, ready to show her I'm okay, that I'm more than okay. Next weekend works. Victor pulled her closer on the couch. I'm proud of you, for everything you've accomplished, for healing while still staying open to connection. That takes incredible courage. I had good help. You did the actual work. I just opened some doors. They were both right, Lena thought. She'd done the work of healing, but Victor had given her the safe space and resources to do it. It was partnership, equal contribution toward a common goal. And the goal, surviving, healing, becoming whole again, had been achieved. She was standing alone, strong and independent and capable. The fact that she was choosing to stand alongside Victor now didn't diminish that independence. It enhanced it, made it richer. 1 year after the phone call that changed everything, Lena stood on the roof garden of her apartment building, watching the sunset. Spring was painting the city in soft colors, and the air smelled like new growth and possibility. Her phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. 1 year sober today. Thank you for giving me a chance when nobody else would. Lena smiled, typed back. Proud of you. You did the hard work yourself. I just opened a door. The same words Victor had used with her. The same truth. Help was valuable, but healing was personal work. You could give someone tools and space and support, but they had to choose to use them, choose to do the work, choose to survive, and then thrive. Sophie had made those choices. So had the 4 other women Lena had helped over the past year, connecting them with Victor's resources, giving them jobs at Lucia's, showing them that escape was possible and life after abuse could be beautiful. So had Lena herself, every single day. Thought I'd find you up here. Lena turned to see Victor emerging from the stairwell, carrying takeout bags. You brought dinner? Thought we could celebrate. It's been exactly 1 year since you made the call that brought us together. Victor set the bags on one of the patio tables. 1 year since you chose to survive. 1 year since you answered. Lena moved into his arms, let herself be held without fear. Best decision I ever made. Second best, Victor corrected gently. The best decision was everything you did after. The therapy, the hard work, the choosing to heal instead of just hiding. That was all you. They ate dinner watching the sunset, talking about Lena's plans to start a formal nonprofit for domestic violence survivors, about Victor slowly transitioning his business interests toward more legitimate enterprises, about the future they were building together. I want you to move in with me, Victor said over dessert. Not because you need to, not to save money or for safety, just because I want to wake up next to you every morning. Want to build a life together that looks like partnership, not protection. Lena considered it. 6 months ago, the idea would have terrified her, moving in with a man, losing her independent space, risking everything she'd built. But she wasn't that person anymore. She was someone who could make autonomous choices from a place of strength instead of fear. Yes, she said, but I'm keeping this apartment too, as an office for the nonprofit, and because I need to know I still have my own space if I ever need it. That's fair, smart even, Victor smiled. I'm not threatened by you wanting independence. I love that about you. I know you do. That's why I can say yes. They held hands across the table, 2 people who'd found each other in crisis and chosen to stay together through healing. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. They'd both have hard days ahead, moments of struggle and doubt and fear. But it was real. It was built on honesty and respect and genuine love. Lena thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, broken and terrified, making a desperate call to a stranger's number. That woman would barely recognize who she'd become, confident, successful, in love. helping others escape the same hell she'd survived. The transformation was complete, Lena realized. Not because the trauma was erased, it would always be part of her story, but because she'd taken that trauma and alchemized it into strength, into purpose, into a life worth living. Thank you, she told Victor quietly, for answering the phone, for seeing me when I was invisible, for helping me become this. Thank you for trusting me, for doing the work, for choosing love even when fear would have been easier. Victor raised his glass. To survival, to healing, to choosing each other every day. To choosing each other, Lena echoed, clinking her glass against his. Below them, the city sparkled with a million lights, each one representing a life, a story, a choice. Somewhere out there, another woman was trapped, afraid, wondering if escape was possible. Somewhere out there, another survivor was taking their first steps toward freedom. Lena couldn't save them all, but she could help the ones she found, could be the lifeline she'd needed, could show them through her own life that survival was possible, that healing was real, that love could exist without control. She wasn't rescued anymore. She was recovered, whole, strong. She was Lena Parker, survivor and fighter, and proof that broken things could be beautiful when they healed on their own terms. And she was finally, fully, completely free. The story that began with a desperate phone call and a broken arm ended here, on a rooftop at sunset, with a woman who'd learned to save herself and a man who'd learned that the greatest gift was creating space for others to heal. It ended not with violence or revenge, but with choice and dignity and a future built on respect. It ended exactly as it should have, with Lena standing tall, loved but not owned, supported but not dependent, choosing every day to live fully and fearlessly. She'd made the call. She'd done the work. She'd survived. And now, finally, she was living.